trying to teach. There we go. So, today we're talking about operations with absolute value. So, the difference between yesterday and today is we're still doing operations, but now I'm adding this piece in there. Absolute value is the distance from 0. The example they gave is the absolute value of -5 is +5 because absolute values make everything what? Positive. And -5 and 5 have the same distance from 0. That's what they're trying to get you to understand. That's why absolute value always works. It says, think of your route to school. If you live 2 miles from school, it doesn't matter which way you go, you are still traveling a positive 2 miles to and from school. Absolute value is the same. Anything that comes out of the absolute value bars is positive. So if I'm looking at example number 1, it says perform any operation inside the absolute value bars. So you have to simplify what's inside first. Then take the absolute value and then perform any operations outside of it. So you start inside, you work your way out. Okay? That's the regular order of operations. PEMDAS, if you remember that. Absolute value bars are a grouping symbol. So you have to simplify the inside, do the absolute value, then do whatever is left. Okay? So if I'm looking at example 1 of A, add the absolute value of -0.03. Is there anything to simplify on the inside? No. So all I have to say is, what is the absolute value of -0.03? 0.03. It just changes it positive. Looking at B, don't mind the 2 that is outside of it. Is there anything to simplify on the inside? Because there's no adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing going on, right? So, what's the absolute value of -7? So I have 2 times 7, which is? 14. And that's the answer. Make sense? Do that the exact same way. You see that negative on the outside there? Treat that last. Is there anything going on the inside? Just -5, right? So what's the absolute value of -5? So that's -1 times 5, which is -5. Because isn't that the lesson I just taught? A negative and a positive creates a negative when you're multiplying? Any questions there? Looking at D, is there anything on the inside that I need to simplify? Yes, so I need to type in 3 minus 5, right? Or if you remember what we learned yesterday, is 5 or 3 bigger? So should it be negative or positive? Negative on the inside, right? What's 5 minus 3? So it should be -2 on the inside of the absolute value bars. What's the absolute value of -2? And that's the answer. I'm going to pause. Is there any questions here? Do you see where the answers are coming from? If you're unsure, make sure you ask me. It's okay to ask. Yes, ma'am. Because we have to do the opposite here. So you see that they're opposite signs on the inside. The 3 is positive and the 5 is negative. It's the rule I just talked about in the last section. So we should take the sign of the larger number. Is 3 or 5 larger? 5. Because you're taking the absolute value. So is 5 or 3 larger? 5. So should my answer be negative or positive on the inside? Negative. So then you say, what's 5 minus 3? And that's where 2 comes from. Any other questions there? And then you take the absolute value, and that's how you got positive 2. Any questions? Everybody good? Yes, ma'am? When you're thinking about, again, distance is a big thing that this is used in your everyday life, because again, you're going to be driving and stuff like that. So understanding how distance works to and from helps you understand timing and ETA. So that's typically where people use absolute value the most. Also, we use absolute value in everyday things like when we're making stuff, building stuff, because you have to be able to understand that even though something's negative, can the absolute value of it still give you the actual yield that you need, if that makes sense. But usually it's distance. Planes use absolute value to understand descent in the air and descent. So they have to, because it can never be negative as in a distance. It always has to be absolute value. But when you're descending, you can go into negative pressure, into positive pressure, things like that. Also sea level, where you live. So it pays to have a teacher who can try to tell you these things. That was a good question. People usually never ask me where they apply this in real life. So, yay. Thanks, Annabelle. Sir? Because you've had every day to work on the practices I've given.
Are they graded?
Yes. Everything I give is a grade. I don't give busy work. That's not the point of this class. It's application every single time. So, looking at letter E, is there something to do on the inside? Yes. Are they the same or opposite signs? Opposite. Is 3 or 7 bigger? 7. So the answer should be what on the inside? Positive. What's 7 minus 3?
4.
What's the absolute value of 4?
4.
Any questions there? You see the thought process in the questions? Ask yourself those questions every time, okay? Is there anything to do on the inside of this?
No.
No. So what's the absolute value of negative 5? So I have 2 minus 5 because these two pieces were brought down. Any questions there? They're opposite signs. So should my answer be positive or negative? Negative, because the 5 is bigger, right? So what's 5 minus 2? 3. Everybody still good? Yes, sir? No, because it's different. You're talking about if there's a parentheses. An absolute value bar is its own thing. So which means it's a grouping symbol, but it's an actual operation on its own. So you can't distribute the negative to the inside. Does that make sense? That's it. That's a good question, though. He asked me, would there ever be a case where these two negatives get combined to each other? No, because this is absolute value. So this is an operation all by itself. So you have to do this before you touch anything on the outside. Any questions? All right, looking at this one, is there something to do on the inside? Kingston, this is your time. What do 2 negatives make when there's a parentheses? So what's 8 plus 7?
15.
So the absolute value of 15 is what?
15.
You see the difference? There you go. Looking at H, is there something to do on the inside? So I bring down this negative 2. I bring down the absolute value bars. Are these the same sign or different signs? The same. So should I keep the sign? Yep. What's 9 plus 2? 11. So Terry, can you tap Jordan right there? Baby, if you're sleepy, you need to grab a clipboard. You can't sleep during this because look how much you missed. This is also recorded.
That's Jordan K.
It sure is. That's Jordan K and not A. Just for clarification. So if a parent happens to listen to this, you know which child it is. You missing notes that you're going to be tested on next week. You missing notes that you got to finish an actual practice for by yourself that I'm checking tomorrow. Is that a wise decision?
No.
Think about it.
It's not a wise.
Any questions up here? Moving on. This is your practices, okay? I'm going to give you 4 out of here to do. So, yes, ma'am? Oh, I didn't do the last one. Sorry. So, what's the absolute value of negative 11?
11.
So, what's 2 times 11?
Negative 22.
There we go. Thank you for that, ladies. Made me lose my train of thought. No, they said that I didn't finish. Not the answer. They just told me to go back. So I was saying thank you. Looking over here, I'm going to give you 4 to do, okay? I want you to do 1. I want you to do 3. I want you to do 6. And I want you to do 7. Just a second, baby. Let me get this off the screen. So 1, 3, 6, and 7. Do those for me, please, and thank you. Sir, you may. No, look at the examples that are on the board. Because didn't I just say, does anybody have any questions for me? Daily grades ain't the time to ask them, baby. Daily grades. So, Looking at number 1, is there anything to do on the inside? No. So what's the answer?
2.
Just 2. Is there anything to work on the inside?
No.
So what's the absolute value of negative 4?
4.
Great job. Is there anything to work on the inside here?
Yeah.
So what do I need to do first? Add those, right? So what's 5 plus 2? What's the absolute value of 7? Great job. Looking at number 4, is there anything to work on the inside? Are they the same or different? The signs. They're different because isn't the 7 positive? Is the 4 negative? So should my inside be negative or positive? Are you sure? Which one? Positive, because why?
7.
The 7 is greater than 4. So what's 7 minus 4? So what's the absolute value of 3? Any questions there? Looking at number 5, is there anything to work on the inside? So what's the absolute value of 4? But what happens with this negative 1 out here? You have to times it. So what's negative 1 times 4? Great job. Any questions there? Looking at number 6, anything to work on the inside? No. So what's the absolute value of negative 8? So what do I need to do with this negative 1 on the outside? Multiply it. So what's my answer? Any questions there? Looking at number 7, is there anything to simplify on the inside here? So, what's being brought down? 3. What? 3 times 7. So, what's 3 times 7? The biggest thing I saw with number 7 is people were putting plus signs where there wasn't one. You can't put those there. Unless you see it explicitly like this, or you see a minus sign like that, you have to leave it as multiplication. Any questions there? Everybody good? Alright, looking at number 8. Is there anything to simplify on the inside? So what's being brought down? Negative 2 times what? Which is? Any questions here? Do you see where your mistakes were if you made any? Any questions for me on this? If you flip it over, the back side is the practice for this, okay? So this is what we're going to do for the last of class. A lot of y'all were asking me how we're going to turn stuff in, right? I'm going to help you with that before you leave today. That way you can start turning this stuff in, and you have the entire weekend to do it, and you have all next week to do it. After next week, the folders close on Fridays, okay? So which means they close on Fridays at 10 p.m. I'm giving you 2 weeks to turn in these assignments and next week's assignments, okay? So the sooner you start doing it, the better for you. That way I can put grades in the grade book. That makes sense, okay? So if I'm looking at this is all done. Make sure you do this practice back here. Finish all of your practices, please, and thank you. People ask me, is it for a grade? I never ask you to do something and not take a grade for it, because that is called punishment.